Hello, and welcome to another edition of Matchbook's Weekend Football Podcast, joined by award-winning journalist Jonathan Wilson. Good morning, Jonathan. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Premier League fixtures coming thick and fast as ever this Christmas period. But Mark O'Hare, the continent is where it's at for you, mate. 15 winners from your last 16 selections on Matchbook Insights. I'm building it up. Tried to jinx you last week, mate, but another clean sweep. I don't know what to do.
I said to you off air, Sully, I'm feeling the pressure these days now, but probably more so on a winning streak than when you're on a losing streak to try and keep delivering the goods. But got to enjoy it while it lasts because it's not going to be around forever. So, it's been a great start to the season. Fingers crossed it continues. I've picked out a couple more for the weekend, which I really like the look of from the continent. I expect the prices and the lines to shift a little bit before kickoff, which is always quite encouraging. They moved our way last weekend as well. So I think if you're doing that, you're always in a decent position to try and allow variance to turn your way.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of Premier League winners last week. The main one was the overs in Leicester and Newcastle. And obviously, Leicester did us a favour there and got all of them for us. So, yeah, we're going to do 4 Premier League fixtures today. The main one we're going to kick off with is Tottenham and Liverpool, Leeds versus Arsenal, Wolves versus Chelsea, and West Ham against Norwich. There's a couple of EFL selections, and Mark also has selections from Italy and Germany. So let's kick it off. And again, look, we're recording this on Thursday morning. Both of these teams, Tottenham and Liverpool, are playing Thursday night. So we're playing a small bit ahead of time here. So you'll have to bear with us in that sense. But let's take a look at the betting as we have it at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday afternoon. Tottenham at 5.1, Liverpool at 1.65. The draw available at 4.3. Tottenham getting a goal start on the main Asian handicap line at 1.79. And you can back Liverpool minus a goal, which I think will be a popular bet this week, and at 2.06. And 2.5 is the total, and that's pretty much shaded towards the over currently. Mark O'Hare, it's got to be Liverpool here again for you, but what's the angle here? Because look, last week we kind of looked at the half-time, full-time. It didn't quite come up, but are we going to pair Liverpool with an unders bet or an overs bet, or what way are we going to attack this one?
Yeah, it is a tricky game to assess because I think it's hard to assess where Spurs are at the moment. We're obviously talking before the Leicester game. Their match last weekend was postponed, and there's talk of illness, whether it's COVID related or not, kind of affecting the squad as well as COVID issues too. I think Son, Lucas Moura, and Ollie Skip are some of the players who've been linked with that. So unsure whether they have symptoms, whether they're available for the weekend, or it's a guessing game at the moment, and it has been that way under Antonio Conte because he was appointed at the start of November, but they've only played 4 Premier League games. Burnley and Brighton both postponed. One of those matches, the first game against Everton, was a bit of a non-event, and then they basically played Brentford, Norwich, and Leeds, which they've won all 3 games at home. But there's been positives and I think negatives as well in all 3 of those performances too. So I think he'll be probably frustrated by the lack of available time on the training pitch. Spurs have been involved in European competition. There's been an international break. We've had COVID-related issues, which have shut down the training ground as well. So hard to know where Tottenham are at. So for that reason, I think the sensible solution is to side with Liverpool in some way or form. Again, they're playing Newcastle on Thursday night, but the market says they win that game, will have an 88% chance of winning it. You expect them to do so. Coming hot on the heels of those 1-0 wins over Wolves and Villa, where they were made to work pretty hard for both. Admittedly, they were the better team and comfortably the better team in both, but there was a sense of inevitability really about the goals and when they did arrive. But I think Spurs will take encouragement really from Wolves and Villa's efforts against Liverpool and trying to negate this Liverpool attack, because this is the Liverpool team who was scoring twice in every game basically up until a couple of weeks ago. And look, Conte, it's not always his remit, but he's more than happy to sort of sit back and play counter-attacking football where required. I think Spurs and the players have been quite well versed in that approach themselves. It's worked for them in the past against Manchester City. It's a game plan they'll be familiar with in these big games as well. So I think we can expect Tottenham to take that approach against Liverpool. I think they'd be foolish to try and go toe-to-toe with Liverpool in the current vein of form they're in. So for that reason, I thought opposing goals alongside Liverpool was possibly the right way to go about it. You can get Liverpool to win and over 1.5 goals at a 1.91, but Liverpool to win and under 4.5 goals is actually 2.06. So I went with the latter. It's a bigger price, just the way in which I expect this match to sort of play out tactically. It allows Liverpool to score 3 or 4 goals if required, kind of guards against Tottenham being competitive and defensively able to kind of hold Liverpool at arm's length for periods if necessary. And again, a bit of a guessing game because we don't know who's available right now. We don't really know where Tottenham are at in terms of their development, but I think it's sensible to side with Liverpool in some way.
Jonathan, we haven't got a massive sample size of this Conte regime in North London, but early signs, positive, negative, anything, something in between?
I'd say on the positive side, 10 points in 4 games against not brilliant opposition is a lot better than they were doing before. And I think you can see an energy in an organisation there that wasn't there before. But I think it will take time. I think imposing a pressing structure midway through the season is very, very difficult. And the fact that, if Conte was coming straight after Pochettino, maybe that wouldn't be too challenging. But the fact you had Mourinho and Nuno in between who don't press, they are having to relearn old tricks. And I think there were issues with fitness there as well. Their fitness. It's not that they weren't fit; it's that the sort of priorities in the fitness were different under Mourinho and Nuno than they were under Pochettino. So, they're a work in progress. I think what I'd say about Liverpool as well is you were talking a lot earlier in the season about them defensively. I think there's 6 goals this season, which are considered 2 or more goals. And was Van Dijk quite back? And there was a little bit of a sense of Klopp's first full season when they were great going forward, but a bit vulnerable at the back, particularly from set plays. But the last 7 games, won them all, and they only conceded 2 goals. Now, my suspicion is there's been a deliberate attempt to sort of tighten that up, which is what you saw around this time of the year in their championship winning season. The November, December, they really tightened up. So I think there's probably something similar going. It's always difficult because obviously, different levels of opposition is very hard to judge. The Milan game, it was a weakened side, so that doesn't really fit. But that's why I sort of think. I think Liverpool are tightening up. I think Tottenham have tightened up under Conte. So I'm totally on board with lowish scoring Liverpool win.
Yeah, Liverpool to win it under 4.5 goals, currently available at 2.06 at matchbook.com. That be our selection in that one. All right, next game we want to talk about is Leeds, fresh from a 7-0 thumping in Manchester during the week. And they take on Arsenal, fresh off their own win at 3.5. You can back Leeds here. Arsenal at 2.14. The draw available at 3.7. Leeds getting a half a goal starting the main handicap line at 1.79. That obviously keeps the draw on side for you there, and 2.5 is the total, very much shaded towards the over at 1.71. Jonathan, I don't know what you take out of a 7-0 loss at Man City. It does happen that you know yourself they can catch fire like that, but are we thinking there's actually a bit of a bounce back in Leeds here, because Arsenal away from home haven't been terrific either, have they?
They haven't. I guess your first instinct when you see that is Arsenal 2.14, given they've just beaten West Ham, is actually pretty generous. Yeah. But I think that 7-0, obviously it's not great, but it's very explicable because, as you say, City can catch fire. I think Guardiola's record against people whose styles he studied very closely. So there was that game when he beat a Leo side, I think 8-0, and got Leo sacked when he was at Barcelona. And Leo now obviously is his assistant. I think when Guardiola knows your system, you can be very vulnerable against him. I think also just the way Leeds play, it lends itself to heavy defeats every now and again. So you've seen that against Manchester United as well. I don't want to say a 7-0 win doesn't matter, because clearly it does matter. But I'm not as worried by it as a lot of people seem to be. There seems to be this sort of great delight in knocking Bielsa. That I think there's people who sort of, I don't know, think he appeals to the sort of hipster side of the football audience. But they played really well against Chelsea. It was only that daft penalty in the last minute that cost them points there. And the issue this season really has been the injuries. And those injuries are still there. No Koch, no Stoik, no Cooper, no Phillips, no Bamford, no Rodrigo. Yeah. And this is a club with the 4th lowest wage bill in the league. So you lose 7 players on top of that, you're in trouble. So I'm in this sort of wider picture, I'm not too concerned by Leeds. Arsenal, I think, are very hard to assess. There's obviously all the stuff going on with Aubameyang, which can play out one of two ways. It could be that the rest of the squad sort of think, oh, thank God we finally got a manager who's imposing some kind of discipline, or it could be, that's a sign of wider turmoil at the club. They had that 10-game unbeaten run early in the season, which I think was a bit flattering, that they didn't really beat anybody of any stature in that run. That although they beat Tottenham and Villa, it was Tottenham and Villa just as about to get rid of managers. And then, they've lost 3 of the last 6, but obviously that home win over West Ham is very impressive. But 8 away games this season, they've only taken 7 points. And I'm sort of prepared to go back to the Leeds performance against Chelsea to assess them rather than the performance against City. So Leeds with a small handicap. What were we saying? We're saying
1.79, so a plus a half, so that keeps the draw inside as well. If the draw comes up, we win our bet.
Yeah. I mean, that's. I wouldn't mind having slightly more, but I guess you'd only want to go much lower than that, than 1.79. So Leeds plus a half seems reasonable enough.
Yeah, I will say too, there's a small bit of margin in that market. Obviously, with games at midweek, the market is only forming, so we probably will get a bit more than that. Mark O'Hare.
In this game last season was a very tight 0-0. Arsenal really struggled against Leeds at Ellen Road last season.
Let's go with it. So Leeds plus a half. Mark O'Hare, if we're to kind of suffer with recency bias here, like the market is going to go with Arsenal here in terms of public money, because it's what we've seen most recently. They win at home last night, obviously against West Ham, and Leeds have that 7-0 loss. So it's sometimes hard to go against that, isn't it, Mark? Like, you have to kind of take a step back, and as bettors, we have to just judge it from the bigger picture and not in just one game.
Yeah, 100%. Recency bias, I think, is definitely playing a part here. But the old adage, you're only as good as your last game. Well, Leeds lost 7-0, but actually, as Jonathan says, last weekend went toe-to-toe with Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and we're very unfortunate not to take a point out of that game with effectively the same squad that played against Man City in midweek. And I think one of the issues clearly is obviously injuries with Leeds at the moment, but it's not often at the moment a Bielsa team under Leeds will have had to play back-to-back games in quick succession in the Premier League. It's been quite some time. It doesn't happen too often these days for them, but to have to go to Chelsea and then Manchester City in back-to-back away games in the space of a few days is going to be tough, regardless of how fit you are or how well prepared you are for those 2 matches. So I think there was a sense of injustice from their perspective about the Chelsea game. But yeah, they're absolutely battered by City. But there's absolutely no reason why they can't kind of get back into the groove of things this weekend. How many times do we see a team get spanked by 6, 7, or 8 and then kind of produce a bit of a rallying performance the game immediately after? The only kind of recent example I can think of is when Southampton lost 9-1 to Leicester at home. The next game was Man City, and everyone was expecting it to be 9, 10, 11, but actually they only lost 2-1 and gave them a really good game. It's a really good response. So I can see something similar happening here for Leeds. And look, last weekend Arsenal had a bit of a perfect storm against Southampton, who missed a raft of key players in both boxes. Odds on against a bottom half team, it's where they kind of come to the party. Midweek was decent as well, but yeah, away from home they have stuttered and stumbled. Their away record under Arteta since the start of last season, where remember a lot of these games were played behind closed doors and home advantage was eroded a little bit. They've only actually won 14, drawn 8 and lost 15, which is a 38% win rate. And look, Leeds have performed reasonably well in some of the big games against the better teams this season, against West Ham, away at Spurs, away at Chelsea. So yeah, I think I'd rather be with them with the start than Arsenal to win at those prices.
Jonathan, can I just ask you one thing just before we come off this game in terms of Bielsa? Is there potential in the bigger picture, aside from this game, that the players are just exhausted or burned out from his pressing style, or is it are we kind of reading maybe too much into the start of the season?
That's always a possibility with Bielsa teams. I mean, it's happened regularly in the past. I know Leeds fans get very upset if you suggest that might be the issue, but they did fall away that first season in the Championship. Whether that was burnout, I mean, I've had this argument so many times with Leeds fans that they sort of produce these stats to say, look, they were running exactly as far, the sprints were exactly the same.
Yeah.
But I think there's a mental fatigue as well. It's not just about how far you can run. It's it's are you thinking about it properly? I remember talking to Juan Manuel Lop, who played for him at Newell's, and him saying that the end of the first season under Bielsa, they won the let me get this right. They won the Apertura, I think, in 90 to 91, and then the next year, so the Clausura of 1991 and the Apertura of 91-2, they barely won a game for an entire year. The structure of Argentina meant it didn't actually matter. And he said, we were just exhausted. We just couldn't think.
Yeah.
And then, but even the beginning of the Clausura in 92, I think they got beat 6-0 off San Lorenzo. And there was this sort of great soul-searching moment of, are we going to keep going with this style or do we need to change it? And they have this sort of these showdown talks in the Conquistador Hotel in Santa Fe. And the players say, no, we're behind you. And they draw 0-0 against Union. I think only lost one more game that season. Retained the league title and got to the final of Libertadores. So I think fatigue and exhaustion is always a danger, but it's very, very hard to, especially as an outsider, unless you've got all the data and not just how far they're running, but also things like the blood tests they do. So the Bielsa will be aware if they're knackered, but also what can he do? He hasn't got any other players. I mean, he's got a smaller squad and 7 of them are injured. So he's brought in Joe Gelhardt, who got his first goal for the club against Leeds last week. As a kid, against Chelsea last week. So I'm not really sure there's much else he can do. Just got to hope that they cling on until they get, particularly Bamford, back, and then Phillips, and hope they're not in too dire a position when that happens, and then can start picking up points again.
Yeah, look, that's what it is. Survival of the fittest at this time of the year, and it's going to be that way. It's going to be interesting how it plays out, and obviously with Bielsa, it will not be boring one way or the other. All right, so Leeds plus a half a goal is the selection there, 0.5. Like we said, there's a bit of margin in that market currently. It's 1.79. I would suggest in another few hours or even a Friday morning, it should be about 1.83 or 5 to 6. All right, next game I want to talk about is Sunday's clash between Wolves and Chelsea. Current betting as we have it at Matchbook.com at the moment. You can back Wolves here at home at 7.2. That's a big price. Chelsea at 1.53. The draw available of 4.2. The main handicap line currently at Matchbook.com. Wolves are getting a 1-goal start at 1.96. 2.5 is the total, slightly shade towards the under. Mark O'Hare. Obviously, Chelsea playing tonight against Everton. We don't have that game to hand. Wolves a good win last night, I thought. And what about Chelsea at the moment, though, Mark? I think there's just signs there, even like conceding 2 last week against Leeds. Again, probably similar to Leeds. They're just trying to get through games at the moment. Are they a bit vulnerable here in this spot against Wolves? A Wolves team that are in good form.
Yeah, I want to be with Wolves in this game for a couple of reasons, really. I know Hwang went off midweek against Brighton, but Raul Jimenez comes back from suspension, which immediately helps that problem. They'll have an extra 24 hours recovery and preparation time, which Chelsea got a huge squad. It shouldn't make a huge amount of impact on them. But Wolves, I think, have been one of the most organised and resolute defensive units so far this season. And we were told when Bruno Lage came in that they were going to put an onus on playing more entertaining, attack-minded football, and certainly in the early parts of the season they did do that, but they weren't getting the rub of the green, and I think they might have just sort of shifted back to be a little bit more pragmatic and make sure the rear guard is definitely sort of ready to compete at this level. And the results have been superb because they've only conceded twice or more on 3 occasions in the Premier League this season. If you look at all the goals against ratings, they're definitely in sort of the top 4, top 6 in terms of goals conceded, expected goals, shots allowed, all that sort of jazz. Definitely sort of trending towards being a top 6 team. So they are very difficult to unpack, and they've had a very difficult schedule of late. But look how hard Liverpool and Man City had to work to open them up, and they're comfortably 2 of the best attacking teams on the planet, let alone the Premier League. So Chelsea, I don't think, are in the same sort of scale as Liverpool and Man City going forward. Obviously, more than capable of scoring goals, but you'd probably have Liverpool and City above them in the sort of pecking order there. So I think Chelsea are going to have to work pretty hard here to get a comfortable win. That's why. Ordinarily, I'd always look towards the top 3 of the division to overcome a reasonable handicap against most teams in the league. But there are a couple of teams you do want to kind of side with as big underdogs, and I think Wolves are definitely one of those because of that resilience and also because of, obviously, as you mentioned, Chelsea's recent wobbles. Interested to hear Jonathan's thoughts on it, whether it's tactically or something systematically wrong there, or whether it's just N'Golo Kante being missing. But they've made some individual errors in recent weeks. Mendy's looked a little bit shaky compared to where he was at the start of the season. The foundations haven't looked quite as assured. 5 without a clean sheet, conceded twice or more in the last 3. Now, Wolves don't score too often, But I think the beauty of the handicap is you can back Wolves plus a goal and a quarter. And if Wolves do score, Chelsea are going to require 3 to see this bet lose. Now, Wolves haven't conceded 3 goals to anyone in the Premier League under Bruno Lage. And if you look at the non-penalty expected goals conceded, only Man City and Liverpool have generated a higher figure than 1.5 so far this season. City were playing against 10 men for 45 minutes against Wolves, and game state aided Liverpool. It was 0-0 until sort of the dying embers of that game as well. So they are very capable of kind of denying you clear-cut opportunities. And if they can do that and even nick a goal, suddenly that handicap looks really quite tasty, really. So I like Wolves plus a goal and a quarter on the Asian 9. I think it's around 176, you said.
Yeah, 1.76. Jonathan, in agreement there, Chelsea in a vulnerable spot here in the Black Country on Sunday?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it is largely injuries to lose, not just Kante, but Kovacic has really put pressure on the back of the midfield. Yeah. I think they knew that was an area where they were vulnerable. I think that's why they brought in Saul right at the end of the window, and that is a deal that hasn't worked at all. I think Jorginho's looked knackered. I mean, that game against West Ham, particularly the last of the half hour of that game, he looked exhausted. So, you know, if he doesn't have Kovacic or Kante there's obviously a lot more pressure on him. So, yeah. I mean, the other thing I do wonder about Chelsea is my suspicion is that Tuchel, if you're coming in totally fresh into a totally new environment and he could play any way he wanted, I think he'd rather play a back 4. If you look at his history at PSG, at Dortmund, at Mainz, he tends to have been a back 4 coach. I think the back 3 worked for them as a fix coming in last season. And I sort of assumed over the summer he'd begin to transition away from that towards the back 4. And the fact he hasn't, I find slightly baffling. Now, it might just be he thought, well, I've got Chilwell and Marcus Alonso, I've got Reece James, I've got really, really good wing-backs. Why waste them? But there does seem to be a bit of tension there in that so many of those centre-backs are out of contract at the end of the season. But he'd look at centre-back short as well, and Chalobah obviously is injured as well. And not just one short in terms of long-term planning, probably 2 or 3 short, depending who re-signs. So I do wonder if that back 3 was sort of one of those botch jobs you do around the house to get, keep the thing, that when you stick a coaster on the washing machine to stop it rocking, and then 10 years later, the coaster's still there. I should have sorted that out. I do wonder if it's still, if that's going on as well. I think the other reason to assume this will be low scoring is that game last season, just after Tuchel had come in, that was one of the nil-nillest of all nil-nils, the game at Stamford Bridge between the two. So, I mean, I think Wolves at 7.2 are astonishingly long. I think it's very hard to see Chelsea winning by more than 1. So, yeah, backing them plus 1.25, it seems, very good.
Yeah, seems a solid look. And when we say 1.25, guys, on site, I'll appear at 1.0/1.5. Half your bet is on 1.0, a goal, and half your bet is on 1.5. So as the lad said, hard to see Chelsea maybe winning by more than 1 here, if they do win at all. Okay, that's the selection there in that game. The last game, the mainstay we want to talk about is West Ham and Norwich. And let's take a look at the betting as we have it currently at Matchbook.com. Hammers here at home in East London at 1.39. Norwich 9.6. The draw available at 5.1. The main handicap line, Norwich are getting a very similar Asian handicap line there at 1.25. At 1.96 and 2.5 is the total. And Jonathan, obviously you selected this game on Tuesday. We weren't aware at the time of the Norwich potential COVID cases. But talk to me about West Ham in a broader kind of sense, because it's slightly a paradox team in the sense that they do really well against top half teams, but sometimes they do struggle against the bottom feeders, and it's a kind of a weird one to figure out.
Yeah, I think they're much better when there's the opposition comes onto them. They've got space to attack, behind the defence. So Antonio, Bowen, they're very good at running in behind. And if there is no behind, they've got nowhere to run into. I think particularly with Antonio being not quite at his best at the moment, I think that's been accentuated. So when I picked this one, it's because I thought there's probably going to be value in Norwich, because I think Norwich haven't been quite as bad as recent results have suggested. They pushed Manchester United very, very close. They're a bit unlucky to get beaten as easily as they were at Tottenham. I mean, they weren't great against Villa on Tuesday, to be fair. But now they've got 4 players we understand out with COVID. There's obviously danger that could spread. They've got other injuries as well. And so I don't trust West Ham, essentially. I think those 2 victories over Liverpool and Chelsea have slightly distracted from some disappointing results. And obviously, I think losing away at Arsenal probably counts as one of those at the moment. And so having, I've sort of changed my mind on this about 20 times, but having thought, yes, there's value in Norwich with a handicap. I now think it's probably not, just because we don't know what's going on with the COVID.
Yeah.
So I think probably low scoring West Ham win is the way to go. So it's a West Ham under 3.5, which is what, 2.16?
2.16. Yeah, Marco, here, do you want to pick it up, because that was actually your original selection there, so you can maybe enhance the case for this one.
Yeah, I mean, similar sort of feelings around West Ham myself, but this is more an anti-Norwich selection, really. And I agree with Jonathan. I think they've been better than potentially results have suggested under Dean Smith, and midweek was very disappointing, actually. I fancied them to give Villa a decent game, but it didn't materialise. And I feel a bit sorry for Dean Smith, because there's been a real inconsistency in selection, whether it's injuries, illness, ineligibility, whatever it might be. There's been no continuity in that team. They've had huge issues at centre-back all season, really. Kabak is now a doubt for the weekend as well through injury. Hanley obviously went off injured last weekend. Rosicka, arguably the more inventive player, is missing until Boxing Day, we think, at the earliest. And it just puts all the onus on Timu Pukki, really, because outside of him, where is the creativity? Where's the goal? Where's the finishing ability? They just look toothless at times when they get into that final third. And look, they've scored 8 Premier League goals in 17 games now, 2 of which were penalties. Only scored 4 goals from open play all season. It doesn't really fill you with confidence. If they're sort of suffering from injuries and illness in the defensive area, then it puts even extra pressure on the final third to score. And I looked at their record against teams outside of the bottom 8. They scored 1 non-penalty goal in 11 games against teams outside the bottom 8, which is dreadful, really. They should have an opportunity here, considering Bonner and Zuma are missing from West Ham. But Diop, I think, is capable enough. Dawson, he's capable, I guess. But potentially there's an opportunity to get in behind those 2. But West Ham have only failed to score in 4 games this season, all of which have come away from the London Stadium. They've not been that great since the last international break. They have looked a little sluggish, a little uninspired as well, but I do expect them to score. And if they do score, everything is then on Norwich and asking them to try and get something out of the game, which at the moment is hard to kind of believe after, watch them with your eyes. You think they're actually all right until they get to the final third. And the data as well suggests that they're going to be in for a tough time. But the thing is, I can see them still surviving. I still think they've got a great opportunity to survive. Yeah, because at the bottom of the Premier League is dross. You don't need to be that good to stay up. I believe that. There's only 3 points between themselves and Watford, who are in 17th at the moment. It's not the biggest gap in the world. So Newcastle will obviously strengthen themselves. It's just whether Norwich have got the ability to go into the transfer market and attract players to the club who are going to make a difference in the final third. And if they can get players fit defensively, I do think they can sort of start grinding themselves into some decent positions. But at the minute, it's hard to have too much faith in them. But yeah, I don't believe they're a lost cause yet.
Yeah, and like you said, Dean Smith is starting to get a bit more of a tune out of them than Farke was anyway. Okay, so let's do a quick recap what we have. So West Ham and under 3.5 is selection there at 2.18. We also have Liverpool to win and under 4.5 on Sunday against Tottenham. That's 2.06. Leeds plus a half a goal, which keeps the draw on side at 1.79. Like we said, there's a bit of margin in that market. That price should be a bit bigger come Friday and Saturday. And Wolves plus 1.25, 1.76. And we just touched on it there. West Ham and under 3.5, 2.18. Insights.matchbook.com is where you can check out the recap of the lads' bets, just in case you're listening through this pod and you might have missed insights.matchbook.com. And if you don't have a Matchbook account and you want to get involved in these prices, and in all honesty, as much as I'd be biased and I would say this, check out oddschecker.com, and any Saturday or any Premier League weekend or midweek, you will see the Matchbook invariably is the best price, if not the joint best price. So it's a £15 welcome offer there. If you are signing up, use the bonus code INSIGHTSRF. That's INSIGHTSRF when signing up to avail of this offer, and full terms and conditions can be found at insights.matchbook.com. All right, Marco, here you're dipping into the EFL market this week. This is an interesting game in League One, and I was looking at the league table this morning, and there's 16 points separating Wycombe and Bolton Yet, Wycombe are the underdogs in this one, albeit they're playing in Bolton. They're 1.7, getting a 3/4 of a goal start on the Asian handicap.
It's a quarter of a goal start rather than 3/4, Sully. But
apologies. Okay,
it's all right. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of margin there as well in the price as well. We can possibly get a bit more on our side there. But yeah, I just think it's a good opportunity to oppose Bolton, who are not in the greatest of shapes right now. 2 wins from the last 11 games since early October, both of which came against the bottom 2 in the division, Doncaster and Crewe. Their record against the top 10 so far this season reads 1 win, 1 draw, and 8 defeats. The majority of those were away from home, but they are struggling with injuries in both boxes at the minute. I just think they're quite vulnerable, really. They failed to score in 7 of the last 15 across all competitions. They do tend to fall short against the league's elite, and I think they're missing Josh Sheehan, a lovely ball-playing midfielder who can unpick tight defences. And defensively, just 2 clean sheets since early September. And they're coming up against a Wycombe team who've scored in 18 of 22. They've scored twice or more in 13 of 17 when you exclude the top 5, and they've only lost 4 league games all season since relegation. They've posted 11 wins, 4 draws, 1 defeat against teams in 10th and below. And yeah, I mean, the prices are quite generous on Wycombe because Bolton's data is pretty strong. There's no doubt about it. They probably haven't got the rub of the green in recent weeks. Their performances have merited a few more points, and I've got them ranked in the top 6 in terms of expected points alongside Wycombe. However, this is a massive kind of clash of styles. You've got Ian Everts, pretty possession style football with Bolton up against the bullies of Wycombe, if you like, who are more than happy to sort of give you play physical football and put you under pressure, really. So I just think backing Wycombe with a quarter goal start is the way to go here, knowing a Bolton win is the only way in which we'll lose our stake. You make money with a draw or a win. As I say, they've scored in 18 of 22. Bolton have won once against the top 10 all season, and their only wins in the last 11 have come against the bottom 2. There are a few bumps and bruises in the Wycombe camp, a couple of bits of illness as well, but they've had a rare midweek off to kind of recover and get themselves going again. And I just back Gareth Ainsworth's team to get something from this game because they're just 4 defeats all season and they're definitely in the promotion picture. So yeah, Wycombe plus a quarter.
Yeah, they're close to 2.8 to win the game. So yeah, plus a quarter will appear on side of plus 0.0/0.5, 1.7 a bit of security. Jonathan, you want to stay in League One here? Top 6 clash, Wigan. They're the underdogs here in this one as well. They're getting a quarter of goal start against Oxford at 1.73. What's the case?
I mean, both of them are in decent form. Oxford had a dodgy start of the season, but unbeaten in 10. The only thing I would say is that the last 4 games with 2 draws, 2 1-goal wins. So I think their form is slightly wobbled. Saw them at Sunderland. I suppose a draw was just about fair, but they didn't play particularly well. And Wigan away from home have just been excellent this season. 7 wins, 1 draw from 9 games. So Oxford's, I mean, they've only lost once at home, but they have drawn 3 times at home. Wigan unbeaten in 6. I just think the way that Wigan play, the way they counter-attack away from home can upset Oxford. So to get them, they just look long. So to back them the next, with quarter of a goal and get, what do you say, 1.7?
1.73, yeah.
Yeah, that seems pretty good to me.
All right, pick it up. So you obviously went to the well with Plymouth against your beloved Mackems last weekend. Didn't quite get it done in the Asian handicap line, but they're the drawn-up bet market, which appears on the site as 0.0. You're backing them against Charlton at 1.8.
Yeah, I think Plymouth were a bit unlucky last week against Sunderland. They got caught cold. Sunderland could have been 3 or 4 up inside 25 minutes, but after that was over, Plymouth were arguably the better side. Sunderland's defended pretty well second half, but they weren't quite clinging on. I mean, Plymouth got 1 back, but I just think the way Plymouth played in the second half of that game, that the fact they only got 1 point from the last 5 games, I think is maybe slightly misleading. Charlton on a decent run, only 1 defeat in 9 in the league, but they played a lot of home games in that run. I think their away from must have been less impressive. So yeah, I can't believe Plymouth can keep on losing if they play like they did in the second half against Sunderland. So to get them drawn out bet at 1.8 seems fair enough to me.
Great stuff. All right, 3 League One selections there from the guys. Mark O'Hare, we're heading back to the continent, to the Bundesliga. Mönchengladbach. You remember when they won 5-0 against Bayern in the Pokal a couple of weeks ago? We were saying, wow, this is just weird. That was a serious outlier. I mean, like, if you look back at the last couple of results, they've conceded 3 to Frankfurt last night. They conceded 4 against Leipzig the week before, and Freiburg lost 6-0 to Freiburg. There's just goals galore, but they just cannot stop leaking goals. They're taking on Hoffenheim, and the goal line here is 2.75, so there's only one way we can back it. We're not backing unders in this one, anyway.
No, I wouldn't be backing unders for sure. I think you've got to look towards Hoffenheim and towards goals. I think Hoffenheim to score twice or more is around 1.85 at Matchbook, which is really appealing. Slightly shorter is over 2 3/4 goals, which is also very appealing. The Bundesliga has overtaken Serie A as the highest scoring league in Europe's sort of major leagues. A few high scoring shootouts and a couple of big romps have kind of allowed them to sort of take that mantle. 3.17 goals per game now, 59%. Gone overs, 40% have featured over 3.5 goals, both teams scoring in 61% of games. So good fun, good entertainment, and Hoffenheim certainly are playing their part. 3.67 goals per game. 9 of their 15 games have gone over 3.5. They've scored at least twice in 10 of those, and they've conceded twice or more in 8 of those. We've had a 6-3, a 5-0, 2 4-0s, 2 3-2s, 2 2-2s, 2 3-1s. It's been pretty wild, and just in midweek they were 2-0 down at Leverkusen and fought back to get a 2-2 draw at the Bayer Arena, which is really quite impressive. They're up in 4th, going great guns, particularly at home. This is going to be a really difficult game for a Gladbach team who, as you say, are in a massive tailspin after what was a outrageous result against Bayern earlier in the season. Full-on crisis now, 4 defeats on the spin, conceding 17 goals. That 6-0 against Freiburg was one of the worst performances in the club's history. And then obviously midweek losing to Frankfurt, which is a little bit embarrassing considering they paid a big fee for Adi Hütter, the head coach from Frankfurt in the summer. So, yeah, defensively they have looked at an absolute shambles, just 2 clean sheets all season. The goals in which they gave away midweek were childish, really. They've lost 6 of 8 away from home, but they do have the firepower in forward areas to hurt teams and score goals. I expect an open game. I expect an entertaining game. Half of Gladbach's matches away from home have produced 4 or more goals. So I think both angles appeal, but I'll take the over 2 3/4 just because we can cheer on both teams and just cheer on goals in the game. I think that's an easy way forward in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, big transfer notwithstanding, Adi Hütter might be not long for this Gladbach world. So we will see how that plays out in the coming weeks. Mark your best bet, just for a change of scenery. We're going back to Italy. But you know what? If it ain't broke, let's go for it. Fiorentina Sassuolo over 2 3/4, 1.8.
Yeah, really looking forward to this game. Should be a really attractive contest. Fiorentina are flying at the moment, and Dusan Vlahovic in particular, he's closing in on the calendar year record for Serie A goals. I think he's 1 or 2 behind Cristiano Ronaldo to take that award, which is really quite something. He's not necessarily kind of getting the love and support from Fiorentina fans because news emerged that he wasn't going to sign a new contract, but he definitely is sort of powering them towards the top 4 at the moment. They're up in 5th, and in Florence they've been really good fun. 5 wins on the spin. They scored twice or more in 6 of 8, scored in every home game. Vincenzo Italiano, who came from Spezia in the summer, worked sort of minor miracles with Spezia, really, has got them playing some great football, very attack-minded. They've scored 21 goals in 8 home games. All 8 have gone over 2.5, and half of those have gone over 3.5 as well. Matches averaging 3.88 goals per game, and overall 13 of 17 have featured 3 or more goals. Just 4 clean sheets, though, and all of which came against the bottom 6. And 9 of their 11 games against the top 15 have seen both teams scoring. So Sassuolo should definitely be encouraged. Came from behind to beat Lazio last weekend for our winner, which is now 14 BTTS winners from 17 for them this season. Only failed to score twice, only kept 2 clean sheets themselves. 14 of those have also gone over 2.5 goals. Away from home, all 8 have gone BTTS. All 8 have gone over 2.5 goals. 3.88 goals per game on average. And remarkably, 5 of those 8 have featured both teams scoring and over 3.5 goals. So, yeah, we know that Serie A is running hot in terms of goals output. Last weekend, just a 5 of 10 went over 2.5 goals. But I expect this one to be certainly up there for this weekend. So I think it's Sunday, the early kickoff in Italy, over 2 3/4.
Yeah, and don't forget Mark has his Insights column will be up from Thursday afternoon, insights.matchbook.com. Jonathan, your best bet, we covered already, Wolves plus 1 1/4.
Yeah, I just think that price of 7 point whatever it was to win is incredibly long, given how Chelsea are playing, given how solid Wolves are. So, I think there's great value in this.
Muted yourself, Solly.
That happens every now and again. I'm waiting right towards the tail end as well. Better to do it late than never at all. All right, yeah, good shout that, Jonathan. Like the angle as well, and like you said, it's a big price if you're having your 10 or 20 quid on it. Might be one to go for. Jonathan, we will not see you until the new year. My thanks for everything for your Champions League appearances this year, and enjoy the Christmas.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.
Mark, we'll be back again next week, 23rd, for our Christmas special. Adrian Clark will be back from his holidays. Don't forget, if you're liking our content, please do give us a preferential review on your podcast app if you're listening to us, or if you're on YouTube, click the thumbs up button to this video and click the subscribe button also. It helps get our content out to a wider audience. My thanks to Mark, my thanks to Jonathan. We'll be back next Thursday. Best of luck with your weekend bets, and goodbye for now.